Hello everyone! I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today I'm going to talk to y'all about why Neal and I made the decision this year that we will no longer be doing local library events. That may be surprising to a lot of people, but it is unfortunately a decision that we've had to make, and that might change in the future, but for right now, that is our current reality. So this year, Neal and I went to a handful of what we considered our tried and true local library events. And unfortunately, at every single one of them, we made zero sales. Doing sales should not be dependent on you supporting your local library. You should support your local library regardless. And I absolutely show my support for local libraries in other ways. But at this point in time, Neal and I will not be taking the time and effort to be working as authors, as vendors at these local library events. Specifically that. And the reason for that is it's not just the zero sales, it's the why behind the zero sales. Is in the past, these library events, and we're talking about like even pre-pandemic was when it was at its height for doing really well at these library events, is they are a single day event and they are the shortest events that we do. They're only for a few hours. It's usually the event starts somewhere between about 11 a.m. and noon and they end somewhere between 3 and 5 p.m. That is an incredibly short amount of time for an event to be, and to put forth all the effort that it takes to do one of for us anyway, to do one of these events. That is a very short amount of time to be able to make those connections and potentially make those sales. That is one of the things moving forward, is that it's not just the local library events, but we're taking a really hard look at single day events. That it's like, is this worth it? Because it means that all in that same day, we have to pack the car, do load in, do the event, do load out, drive home, unpack, all of that in the same 24 hours. That is a lot. That is a lot, y'all. That is actually more effort than doing a full weekend event where we drive in and unpack and then we have 2 or 3 days of events and then we leave and blah, blah, blah. That is far less effort and stress than doing all of that crammed into one day. That is craziness. And so that single day event like that has to reach a certain standard for it to be worth it for us to do that in today's world. Just having that small window of time, it's not a lot of time to be able to interact with people. And if it just happens to be one of those days, then it's just going to suck. And it's going to be like, why did I even do this? And that happened sometimes where for whatever reason, it was just, there was nobody. There was just nobody. It was just a room full of vendors just staring at each other. And there were like no people that came to the event. That's a bad day. There were the days where there were plenty of people at the event, but nobody was spending money. That's a bad day. And the reason that a lot of this is happening is the outside factors of, one, as I've talked about in my other videos, we are unfortunately, as a country, as a whole, in this time, doing financially terrible. People are struggling to afford their bills and groceries. So the probability of them going out and spending money on non-essentials is so much lower than it has been in decades, if not in living memory. And so knowing that people are less likely, even if they do come to the event, they're not going to spend any money, or they might buy one thing, one singular thing at the entirety of the event, is bad. That is a bad ratio to have. And then on top of that, the audience at these events just do not jive with what me and Neal do, as well as it just feels like these library events are not for authors anymore, which just feels like an oxymoron. And while I do not throw shade on the libraries, they have to make the choices that they make, because libraries are struggling now, y'all, and they have to do whatever it is they have to do to keep those doors open and show that they're relevant and they're doing stuff for the community. So take that with a grain of salt. However, it feels very much like libraries are abandoning authors, and that sucks. So this is twofold in that most of these events now are focused on children, and not just children, but like young children. We're talking like kids that are like 5 years old. That is like the antithesis of our audiences. Like, our books are mainly meant for adults. Like, they're not meant for wee baby's first book kind of thing. Like, and that's what it feels like a lot of these events are now, is they're for little kids and families with little kids to have a place to spend the afternoon and do a thing together. It does not feel like a place to be like, hey, we're going to support these authors, and in turn those authors are going to support the library. That massive audience and expectation shift is a big part of why Neal and I are no longer doing these events, is that it's like, if our audience is not even going to be there, and most importantly, if it's just going to be a lot of children there, we don't need to be there. Because there's nothing worse than being a creative person where your audience is adults, being in a room full of children. Because then you have to sit there and be like, oh no, I have to be like on my game and make sure that nobody is seeing things they shouldn't see, that I don't have like a 10-year-old picking up one of my books and inadvertently opening to, of course, the worst page they could possibly open to, and then I get yelled at by a parent. I don't need that in my life. As well as, it also sucks to have kids be like, oh, I really like the picture on this book, and then have to tell them, sorry, this is not for you, and then, you know, cue the waterworks and the freaking out and the tantrum. Don't need that either. Don't have a bar at Discovery Zone. You don't do that and have all the kids be like, oh, I love all the colors of these drinks. Sorry, honey, they're not for you. Like, it's bad expectations for everybody all around, and it's going to end badly. The other part of it is with libraries largely abandoning authors. And a big part of that is because all of the nonsense with today's world, with all the book bans and all of the threats that the administration is making against authors, specifically making about the different things that they choose to write about, and saying that they're going to criminalize you for the things that you write about. And they're doing that to libraries, where they're telling libraries, if you have books about this or about that or whatever on your shelves, we will criminalize you. We will withhold funding. So many libraries have basically taken it where they're like, unless you are like a mainstream author who is published by one of the big publishing houses like Penguin House, unless you're like a New York Times bestseller, we're not taking your book. And that used to be a big part of doing these events, is that even if we didn't make the book sales that we wanted, that the librarians would walk around the room and choose books to induct into the library. And Neal and I both have books in a lot of these libraries. And so the fact that that's not even on the table anymore is kind of like, why are we doing these events? And I know these reasons sound very selfish, but at the end of the day, we also have to do what's best for us. And we can't just go to an event and waste our time being there for literally no reason. That helps nobody. And that also means that we're taking up a table slot that somebody else could have had that would have had a more successful time at this event. So think about it in those terms as well, that us being there, having an unsuccessful time, hurts us and hurts the event. It's a give and take thing. It's not just us being selfish, it's also bad for the event too. Having it where these librarians are not inducting books, and that the libraries are really moving away from featuring authors and really giving a voice for local authors, it's kind of like, why are we here? And the very last local library event that we did this year, we were the only authors at that event. Period. And that was really the writing on the wall for us, that we looked around and no one else at this event had books. And we were like, okay, well, it's been a good run. We're done. That was definitely it, y'all. That was the final straw on the camel's back, was that we were the only people with books at that event. We were just like, what are we doing here? It seems to be that the main people that do well at these events are the people that have the fun little tchotchke things. The fun little brightly colored tchotchke things that the kids want to buy. So the little crochet animals, the little 3D printed dragons, other little like tchotchke things, like these ears. There were a lot of people selling these kind of ears, whether handmade or resell. A lot of brightly colored stuff intended for little kids. A lot of stuff that like was little kid stuff like Paw Patrol, Disney, Minecraft, just a lot of stuff that little kids like. So a lot of character-based stuff. All that kind of stuff. There were not artists. There were not authors. It was mainly like little toy tchotchke costume stuff. That was the bulk of the vendors at these local library events. And so this shift in this other direction, again, no shade to the libraries. They have to do what they have to do. And this has just, I guess, been the progression of what's happening with these type of events. But what that means is that people like me and Neal are being left behind. And so we've made the decision that we're like, you know what? We're going to take the L. And until things change, we won't be doing these events anymore. And that does make us sad because we do love doing these events and supporting local libraries and meeting the local community and all of that. But if we don't gain anything doing these events, there's no reason for us to be there. At the end of the day, again, being an author is being a business person, y'all. Unless you are somebody who is very lucky to have your livelihood taken care of, whether that's through your own means or you just have money through inheritance or family or whatever have you, where you don't have to care about the bottom line and about selling your books, and you also don't care about how your time is spent, that's just how you want to spend it, good for you. At the end of the day, we're business people, and we need to take into consideration what's in it for us. Is this worth our time? And right now, these library events just aren't. So again, I say, please, libraries need our support more than ever. They absolutely need us authors to support them, and we do. We're just no longer going to be supporting these specific events by attending them. We are not going to be hauling all of our stuff out to these events to try to sell our books and make no sales anymore. We're just not going to do that anymore. We're going to support libraries in other ways and do our best to hopefully ride this out and see things get better for both libraries and authors all around. So I hope you all found this video helpful. If you did, please be sure to give it a like, and if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.